Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to part 5 of a special series for the Strength Coach Podcast, Racism in Fitness, What Can We Do Better? This is a 6-part series. I do want to say thank you for all the messages, the feedback, the texts, the shares on social media. I really appreciate so many people getting behind this. So I do want to repeat some of the reasons why I'm doing this for all the new listeners. Again, this is a 6-part series, part 5, so make sure you go back, check out those other episodes. With the recent events, including the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and now Rayshard Brooks, I wanted to try and do something that was more than just posting a black square on social media to just show that I believe Black Lives Matter and to help my listeners and me understand some of the black experience in fitness. These events made me look at my own actions and really more importantly, my non-action. And what I'm trying to do, whatever I can to be an anti-racist. And that means educating myself, listening to books, watching documentaries, and having conversations. And these conversations including. So I've personally been learning so much from these episodes. I've done a horrible job including black voices on the Strength Coach Podcast. So that's one thing that I aim to do with future shows, is having better representation of black coaches on the show. What I aim to do for this series really was just start a conversation about racism in the fitness industry with some folks from diverse positions within the profession. That includes high-level corporate positions, trainers, physical therapists, and strength coaches. So we're getting some different perspectives here. I'm just trying to listen and learn and use my platform to help people understand a little bit better about what's happening in the world. Each episode has a sponsor that is going to be donating $250 to the organization of choice for each episode's guests. I'm also going to be donating $50 each episode, and I want to encourage you to donate as well. And I'll have all the links to the organizations at continuefit.com in the show notes for each episode. So today I have on William Johnson, and he's a Georgia State University graduate and a strength and conditioning coach who specializes in athletic performance and development. He's been working with professional collegiate and high school athletes for over 9 years in the metro Atlanta area. And the organization he has chosen is Just One Pair. It's actually his own initiative that does programming in the metro Atlanta area for at-risk youth. Very cool initiative. Can't wait for you to hear all about it. Today's sponsor is Larry Draper from On Target Publications. That's my publisher. They published Be Like the Best. So I really appreciate Larry so much for her generous donation. All right, lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with William Johnson. I have on William Johnson. He's a Georgia State University graduate. He's a strength and conditioning coach who specializes in athletic performance and development. He's been working with professional collegiate and high school athletes for over 9 years throughout the metro Atlanta area. One thing that really attracted me to Will on Instagram was I saw that he has a nonprofit called Just One Pair, and he works with metro Atlanta area youth, at-risk youth. And I love that he does that. And that's going to be his organization of choice that On Target Publications will be donating to. I will be donating as well. We're going to talk more about that later. So, Will, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's definitely appreciated. I love the podcast. I've been following the podcast for quite some while. So to be able to impart some knowledge on what's going on currently is definitely a blessing.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, Will, you know what? You're in Atlanta. We started with this pandemic, and you and I were talking earlier. You used to own a gym, and now you're getting back into the game, and then the pandemic hit. So, opening a business is stressful. The pandemic has been stressful. And then we have the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and now in your hometown, Rayshard Brooks. And, it's seriously stressful times, totally raw. How are you doing through all of this?
On right now, it's kind of tough to deal with. It's kind of rough to manage. Just as being an African American male, you deal with these things every day. I've dealt with these things all my life, and being from Albany, Georgia, I saw a lot of these things growing up, and Albany, Georgia continues to still have some of these things going on. So to be able to come up here to Atlanta and continue to see these things going on, it's pretty exhausting at this point. And everywhere you go now, there is some sort of tension, or there's some sort of uneasiness in just interactions with just people nowadays, because everybody has their own, everybody's trying to wrap their mind around what's going on, whether they understand or don't really understand. It's creating some easiness, even just being out and about in public with individuals, which is why I'm also thankful to be able to have this conversation, because hopefully it eases some of the ideas and the thoughts and the tensions that individuals may have during such a time full of chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's stressful for everybody involved, and even, not even close for me, but like right now doing these interviews, I mean, they're uncomfortable conversations for the most part. Not really. I mean, everybody that I've talked to has been, great. I have some friends that are on this as well that I've known before, some new friends like you who've listened to the podcast as well. But, also I don't want to mess this up. It's another thing. I think it's an important issue. I feel like a little bit like sometimes I'm out of my league here, but I felt like this was needed. And the my low hanging fruit is fitness professionals. And that's why I wanted to tailor this to the fitness profession. So I want to talk to you about just any racism that you may have, experienced. You've been doing this for a while in the fitness profession. If you have any stories or what your thoughts are on that.
So just how racism has impacted me in a couple ways, just to touch on it. And like in thinking about this, I was able to come up with a couple points just for me thinking about being able to provide services to my community, because we understand that the African American community has higher health risk as opposed to some of the non-Black communities. Just even trying to help with services, it's often that I have to make an ethical decision between do I help my community or do I help myself? So we understand, and statistics have been there to say that the average household income is going to be a lot less in the African American community as opposed to other communities. And because of this, we understand that there's not a lot of discretionary income to go out between childcare, child rendering, education, and work, and just paying bills. There's not a lot of discretionary income that can go out to pay for a strength and conditioning coach or pay for a trainer. And so then when I do have to go out and assist in my community, whether it be educational resources, whether it be training, I may have to do it at a subsidized cost. So the community is helped on the most part. And now, if I do that too much, now I'm not being able to meet the needs of myself. So sometimes it's having to make that ethical decision to say, do I help my community or do I strictly try to figure out how to just continue to help myself? And that's one of the ways. Just even continuing from there, just the look of fitness. I think the look of fitness is just in this world or in the United States, let's make it tie it home, it just looks totally different. And so in preparing for this, I looked up a couple words. I Google searched squat. I Google searched strength coach, fitness, running, and workout. Now, when going through those, it was like a 10-to-1 ratio. And that was just on a smaller level of the amount of white or individuals not of color compared to the individual of color. And so it was like for every 10 photos that you would see of a white male or female, you would see one individual of color. And when I say of color, I'm talking about somebody of Asian, somebody of Hispanic descent, or somebody of African American. So that's a disparity in and of itself. When we talk about fitness and we talk about things like squat and strength coaching, we talk about fitness and running and working out. If I cannot see myself in representation of these words, how does that cause me to think about myself? Does that make me think that people of my color do not work out or they do not participate in any type of fitness fitness-related activities. So what am I to think about myself at that time? And then even how these and this look and this imaging ties into just the stereotypes of men that we have on fitness and that we have on certain hues of color. Now, with that, we understand that through media representations that men of color and women of color are mostly advertised when we talk about ads and we're talking about media representation. We're mostly advertised towards what we can do in a physical nature as opposed to what we can do in intellectual contribution. And this was just in an article that I was able to read as far as media representations and the impact of lives on black men and boys. It further tied in to say that most of the time, African-American males of color are going to be viewed as assertive or aggressive based on what they can do in the realm of their physical attributes and less likely than what they can do on an intellectual level. And I think this basically just ties into how I'm affected, how I'm viewed, how I may be viewed when I walk into a situation, and how I continue to help my community.
It's interesting. You hit the nail on the head with. I've been thinking about that with this idea of self-image. We had Dr. Jennifer Hutton on, and she works for Rock Tape, and so she'll go into a lecture that she's doing, and she said oftentimes someone will come in to help them set up, and they'll go to her assistant first, who's white. Yeah. And not go to her. She's the one teaching the class. And so, there's this idea of, like you had talked about, just this, it's represented as physical nature over the intellectual nature. And so obviously, yes, that can affect you, especially when it comes to other things like speaking at conferences or what somebody might think of when they come into your facility to talk to you about training, right? So...
Right.
It's interesting. Do you feel like policy over the time you've now worked in about 9 years in the field, and I've been reading or listening to Ibram Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist, and he really, really talks a lot about policy. You know, can you talk to us about, because sometimes it's hard to see it. So can you talk to us about maybe some policy that you feel might hold your career back?
So in thinking about policy, it more so tied to me to think about the things that has held me back, and people of color and people that look like me. And just the first thing that came to mind as far as representation. And even in looking at the statistics on strength coaches in the collegiate realm, and this is just basically going from the NCAA site and looking at the demographics database. In 2019, 77% of Division I strength coaches were white compared to 14% black, 2% Hispanic, and the numbers went down from there. And then this isn't much of a change from minority since 2012, in which I think the number was about 13% for blacks, and then it just went down from there. And then even in Division II sports, we're talking about in 2019, white individuals made up 80% of all strength coaches, and blacks made up of 9%, Hispanics and 4%. So when we talk about representation, there's not a large amount of representation of people of color in these strength coach jobs. So then we have to ask ourselves, what are the things that may be keeping individuals of color from being in these positions? Now, one thing I can think about is the educational requirements. Now, I'm all for education. I'm all for learning. I'm all for gaining knowledge. But we know that one of the ways in order to get into some of these programs is standardized testing. And I don't think a lot of people understand that standardized testing hasn't always been the best way to compare what educational level two people are on. And just even for individuals who may not understand, a testing expert named Jay Rosner. He talked about the SAT, and he said it showed a pattern of discarding possible test questions that black students get more right often than white students in field tests. And this is because they are seeking to maintain the reliability of the test, which means they're taking into account relatively higher scores of white test takers. So to put this into terms, is the questions are more altered towards a lifestyle of people who have more educational opportunity, as opposed to people who don't have educational opportunity. So if you're asking questions based off of people who have more educational opportunity, then the people who don't have as much opportunity are more likely to get those wrong, which means the test scores aren't as high and they aren't represented very well. And if these schools are asking for high scores, and we know that African American individuals or people of color aren't getting as high scores based on the requirements of the test scores they're asking for, now we're kind of having a disparity in just the number of people that are being able to apply for certain schools to gain higher education based off of these testings. And they are trying to make some advancement to try to even out what is acceptable as far as outside of these SAT test scores as well. But that is still a barrier when you're trying to go for a job, or when you're trying to go for continuing education to get an additional degree. Now you still have to go past, you still have to pass that test, or your scores are still rely heavily on that one test based on to get you that entrance into that school. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was your degree at Georgia State?
So my degree was overall in business administration, then a minor in exercise science.
Oh, it was exercise science. Okay, good. No, because for me, I have a marketing degree, and so like I wouldn't be able to get some of these jobs based on the degree piece too. I get what you're saying. Did you try to? Was that something that you were originally thinking about doing? Were you thinking about going into college and pro as a strength coach at all, or did you know right away you wanted to go into the private sector?
I always wanted to do entrepreneurial in the entrepreneurial realm, just because I wanted to be able to be a manager of my own time and help people how I want to help people without a certain structure. And in going to school, I knew that I wanted to be in business for myself, so that was the first avenue I went to. And I knew that sports and exercise spoke to me, so that was determining my other avenue. And I just chose to do it the majority of the business side with the exercise science side, as opposed to the other way around. And since then, I've been continuing with the education, with getting my CSCS and getting my CES, and just continuing with that part, and just even trying to continue to get into a doctorate program and a master's program as well. And so, the testing is still there, and I have no problem with the testing. But I just think about all the individuals who come from areas in which their educational background isn't the best, but they still have the potential, and they still have the engagement, and they still have the will to learn. Where are they falling in this process?
Oh yeah, and of course we both know, you and I know that you've learned more in the last 9 years about exercise science than you ever would in school, right? I mean, it's about coaching and connecting with people is about, really being in the trenches and learning that through those trenches.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, even to go a step further, even when we do have the degrees, and we do have the same accolades as some of our white brothers and sisters, it's almost like the tale of the saying in the black community: you have to be 2 times as good as a white individual just to have a seat at the table. It feels like that comes back to haunt us, because even in resumes, when submitting resumes, we have seen that resumes are often scrutinized to often scrutinized to kind of favor individuals who may be of a certain ethnicity as opposed to others. And this is just, even in reading and looking at the Harvard Business School, they talked about having to whiten resumes and how whitened resumes kind of get more views than resumes that may have minority implications. And so when I say whitened, an example of that is like an applicant using his middle name as opposed to his first name due to he may feel a certain stereotype based on his first name. And I feel like we shouldn't have to do that. We should be able to look at it, not really look at a name, but look at the value of the experience that this person has had, as opposed to what their name may be or where they're from or these other stereotypes that we attach to certain things.
Absolutely. Now, you were a co-owner of a gym, and now you're getting back into that. And have you experienced anything like, for example, it could be a loan, or it could be any, like different things within as an owner, the barrier into entrepreneurship? Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So I had my own facility located in the city of Decatur. It was called the Sweatbox. And then, so two different examples on racism just in that of itself. My business partner and I, we went to speak to a group of kids at North Atlanta High School. And we were on the elevator, and while we were riding the elevator up, a parent of one of the students who we were speaking to was on the elevator. This was a white male. And so he looked at us and he said, "Hey, what have you two done so well to be able to speak to these kids?" And we said, "Well, we own a gym in the city of Decatur. It's strength and conditioning, athletic performance." We told him about it. He said, "So you all own it, right?" And we said, "Yes." He's like, "So you all pay bills?" We said, "Yes, we do." He said, "So people pay you all?" And we said, "Yes, people pay us." He was like, "So it's a brick and mortar facility?" And we said, "Yes, it's a brick and mortar facility. People pay us." And he was like, "That's interesting. So you all know how to balance your books and everything as well?" And we said, "Well, we've been in business for 3 years now, so we must be doing something right." And he was like, "Oh, well, good for you." And so it's the thing of why, what's the idea behind those questions? And I'm a black individual at the time. I had dreadlocks and I was about 185. My business partner, dark-skinned black male, he was about 215 at the time. So we're very athletic-looking individuals, and it just goes back to the point I talked about, being looked at as our physical attribute as opposed to our intellectual attributes. And him saying that just caught me off guard, and I was wondering, like, what's the idea behind the 5 or 6 questions that you had, and why is it hard to believe that we are able to own a gym and people pay us for the services that we offer? That was the first experience. The second experience, more recently, about a year or so ago, I'm looking at a space. I'm looking at about a 3,000 square foot space. Before then, I had to send in all my paperwork, my credit score, my resume, all my documents up front. And I meet the building owner. The building owner is an older white individual. And he says, "So you're William Johnson?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "You're the one with the blank credit score?" I said, "Yes." He says, "How did you get that?" And I say, "Because I don't like being in debt. I don't like owning individuals." He was like, "That's a better score than some of the people I know." I'm surprised. And I was thinking, why are you surprised? Because I have a good credit score. And so then once we got past the asking me questions to verify that I was the one that submitted that credit score, he said, "Well, I would love to have a tenant like you. Normally I have tenants that don't pay or so on and so on, but I would love to have you." And so it made me think, if I didn't have that credit score, would this conversation have went differently?
Yeah.
If I wasn't the color I am, would the conversation have went differently? And why is it hard to believe that I can be an educated black male and still have a good credit score? And so that just kind of caught me off guard. It caught me real off guard.
Yeah, I had a gym myself and never had a question like that. I never showed a credit score to my landlord or didn't have to do anything really, to be honest with you. Just, hey, here's the check for the first, here's the security and the first month's rent.
Yeah.
That was it. So, and no one ever asked me if I know how to do my books, which, by the way, I don't. So,
on top of that, I didn't even get the space because in doing our due diligence, there were a lot of repairs that needed to be made to the space, and apparently, I was asking for too much. I was asking for too much changes to be made, such as the water he had was connected to the space next door, and I wasn't taking the space next door, so we asked him to just separate the lines so that I would just only pay for the water in which I use and not the water for both spaces. And he says we were just asking for too much, so therefore he chose to not lease the space to me.
Yeah, looking for an excuse, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about what we can do, what you feel like the profession and FitPros can do better. I was telling everybody about, me and the Strength Coach Podcast. You've listened to this show before. I'm trying to think of my self-awareness and what can I do better. I can have more black voices on the show, not just for the series, by the way. I mean, better representation. I've done a horrible job of having black voice representation on the Strength Coach Podcast, and that's something that I need to work on. So talk to us about what you feel like the profession and FitPros can do better.
So in thinking about this, a couple things came up. So first, I think we all need to educate ourselves on systematic racism. There are a lot of books that are coming out there. Hulu, Netflix are allowing us to have a lot of resources and documentaries just free now to just educate ourselves. We have books like White Fragility and the book that you mentioned earlier that are just helping us kind of shed light on what's going on. Next, I would say actually believe that the people who are experiencing this are experiencing this. I understand we all have our differences in some kind of way, or our understandings may be off, but at least give people the empathy that you can see that there is something wrong with what's going on. And the beginning of that empathy can start us to heal, can start us to educate each other, and can start us to have these tough conversations that will lead us towards the changes that we all need to heal as a nation. Next, I would say educating your staff and creating opportunities for diversity in your gyms, schools, and communities. If we, based on the NCAA, if there's 77% of strength coaches that are white, now let's look at that. Let's look at why that is there. Let's look at how can we add more diversity just in our gyms, schools, and communities, not just in our words, right? And not just saying, oh, we're committed to doing this, but actually look at what are we putting in place to make sure we're addressing diversity and that the people who are being represented in these diverse backgrounds are being heard, are being felt like they're a part of what we have going on here. And then next, I would say fight for additional resources for individuals who may be in food deserts. Some of our athletes are experiencing food deserts in which they're not having food at home. And that's affecting them being able to train. That's affecting them being able to pay attention in school. It's affecting them overall in their physicality. So let's fight for resources for those individuals in those food deserts. Let's donate to community centers so that it keeps the individuals safe. And let's also try to do more programming in the black communities so that we kind of heal some of the disparities that are going on. Next, I would say let's encourage universities to take a look at the metrics for acceptance in these educational programs. So maybe I'm not a higher education person, but I have a lot of friends who are in higher ed. And so let's look at other metrics that we can do that will kind of be able to allow us to understand the quality of education that individuals have received, even though they might not do well on these SAT, ACT tests and these standardized tests that we're giving out. And then lastly, I would say ask yourself questions. The best thing we can do is self-govern ourselves. I think we all have some sort of prejudices going on. But let's continue to question those about ourselves and question why we have those. How can we go back and educate ourselves on those prejudices so that we are treating everyone fairly without feeling defensive or offensive in certain situations?
Absolutely, and I think you got to take the ego, your own ego out of that. We talked to Dr. Jennifer Hutton about this in allyship, and one of the stages was this self-interrogation. Basically what you're talking about is asking those questions, and they could be tough questions to ask or answer for yourself, and they're hard to do, but they're worth it. So good stuff. Coach, before I let you get to the closing thoughts, I really want you to talk about the organization that you chose, which is your initiative, Just One Pair. Tell us about Just One Pair.
Okay. So Just One Pair, it started out with me going to a local middle school, it's Crawford Lawn Middle School, and me seeing the state of the shoes that the kids were in. Some of these kids were wearing shoes of their relatives, and they didn't necessarily fit, but these shoes were passed down because they didn't have the means to wear to buy other shoes. And so because I saw that, I thought about each child or student to have their own pair of shoes. So with the gym, the sweatbox that I owned at the time, we started doing free workouts, and the workouts would just be donation workouts. And we took from there, we bought a pair of shoes and we gave them to the students. And when we gave them to the students, if you've never seen a child hug a box of shoes, it will change your life. These children hugged the box of shoes because this was their first chance to really have something that was their own, and they didn't have to share with their siblings. And so from there, it sparked an idea. What could Just One Pair of shoes do? And that started the initiative of Just One Pair. What we currently do, we go into at-risk communities and schools, and what we do is programming all around sneakers. We know sneakers are a hot thing right now, from LeBron James, Damian Lillard, James Harden, Kanye West. We just know that shoes are a hot thing right now, especially in the younger generations. So if I can take a shoe and grab your attention with the shoe and then show you all the jobs that are within making shoes and all the jobs that were in advertising shoes, and that you don't have to be just an athlete in order to just have your own shoe. You can produce your own shoe. You can do the design for your own shoe. There's so many things around that. And if it's not going to be a shoe, you have a product in mind that you can do, that you can take these lessons that I'm teaching you about shoes and then just branch out from there. So what we do a lot of programming around shoes because we know that shoes grab the attention of the youth right now. And if I can use a shoe to teach you a lesson, you can grab it and you can apply it to almost anything in life. Because I know what shoes did for me, and I still love shoes to this day. Shoes taught me how to take care of things. It taught me to keep things clean. It taught me how to dress. It taught me, it helped me in just my athletic performance overall. So I just want to kind of bestow that same idea and that same experience I had in opening up a box of shoes and hearing the wrapper and smelling the shoes and putting your shoes out and lacing them up and thinking how good you're going to feel going to school. I want to give that same feeling to every student having their own pair of shoes.
Love it. It's so brilliant. It's a great way to get to the kids as well and grab their attention. I love to, look, we, On Target Publications, will be donating $250 to Just One Pair. I will be donating $50. We're going to encourage everybody. We're going to have links on continuefit.com. But also, what's very cool is they don't only accept financial contributions. They accept new shoes in a box and gift cards and vendor services. So great job. Great job with that, William. Love it. So let's just let you... have some closing thoughts on this whole thing right now.
So, lastly, I just want everyone to understand that systematic racism is real. And no matter how much we may run into individuals who feel like it's not real, believe the ones that are actually experiencing it. If we can look and have empathy on organizations in which that are taking care of animals who've been abused and who are taking care of people overseas who are who are helping the homeless and helping the sick, then allow your same empathy that you have in those situations to be carried over into the situation of systematic racism. I have been affected by it. Plenty of your friends, individuals who you may not even really know have been affected by it, they have experienced it as well. Believe them. And we're not asking you to fight whether they're right or wrong. We're just asking you to be human, feel, understand, and extend at least your empathy in trying to understand what is going on in the world, and be there, help, and make change where you can make change. It's every little step that you can do in your community, in your life, that adds up to a whole picture of us trying to change the idea of what's going on and right wrongs that were set hundreds of years ago that we're still experiencing to this day.
Absolutely, just like fitness, a little progress every day, just a little bit better every day. So great stuff, William.
1% better.
Yep, you're doing great work, man. We really appreciate you coming on. I'm glad we connected. Thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much.
All right, that's going to do it for part 5 of Racism in Fitness. What can we do better? Remember, this is a 6-part series. We're almost done. Thanks so much to William Johnson for coming on and giving us his perspective and experience on racism in the fitness industry. Thanks to Laurie Draper from On Target Publications for their generous donation to William's organization of choice, Just One Pair. I will have links at Continue Fit to find out more and to donate yourself. Next episode, I continue the conversation with Chrissy King, a Milwaukee-based personal trainer, lifestyle coach, and fitness blogger. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you'll join me next time.